Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
I'm Harold, and I need to tell you about the day my world came crashing down. After 14 years of what I thought was a solid marriage, I discovered that everything I believed about my wife was a carefully constructed lie. Diane had always been the kind of woman who drew people to her. Warm, articulate, stunning in that effortless way that made heads turn, even when she was just picking up groceries. We'd built our life in a small Ohio town, where everyone knew everyone, and I couldn't have been prouder to call her mine. I spent my days restoring antique furniture in my workshop, a trade I'd learned from my grandfather, while Diane taught art at Jefferson High. She'd come home every evening with stories about her students' latest masterpieces, her eyes lighting up as she described their creative breakthroughs. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs that I chose to ignore. It started around Christmas little things that didn't quite add up. She'd step outside to take phone calls, claiming it was her sister or her department head. Her phone would buzz at odd hours, and she'd glance at it with this quick, almost guilty expression before sliding it face down on the counter. Some mornings I'd wake to find her already dressed and putting on makeup, saying she had an early faculty meeting I'd never heard about before. I told myself I was being paranoid. Diane had always said I had a tendency to overthink things, to see problems where none existed. "You analyze furniture joints better than you analyze people," she'd tease, and I'd laugh along because maybe she was right. Maybe this was just one of those rough patches that every marriage goes through. But then came that Saturday in February that changed everything. Diane announced over breakfast that she was meeting her longtime friend Monica for lunch and an afternoon at the new art exhibit downtown. She was wearing a perfume I didn't recognize, something floral and expensive smelling that definitely wasn't the vanilla scent she usually wore. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she'd put on a burgundy sweater I'd never seen before. "Monica's been going through a rough patch with her divorce," Diane explained, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "She really needs someone to listen." I nodded and kissed her cheek, tasting the unfamiliar lipstick. "Tell her I'm thinking of her," I said, but something felt off. The way she avoided eye contact, the practiced tone of her explanation, it reminded me of how she'd rehearse parent conference presentations. After she left, I tried to focus on refinishing a 1920s bureau in my workshop, but I couldn't concentrate. My hands kept slipping on the sandpaper, and I found myself staring at the same wood grain for minutes at a time. Finally, I threw down my tools and made a decision that would haunt me for months. I got in my truck and headed toward town, telling myself I'd just swing by the museum to see if her car was there. If it was, I'd feel foolish and drive home if it wasn't. Well, I'd deal with that when it happened. Her silver Honda wasn't in the museum parking lot. My chest tightened as I drove through the downtown area, checking every restaurant and cafe where she might be meeting Monica. Nothing. Then, almost by accident, I spotted her car turning into Willowbrook Estates, a newer subdivision about 20 minutes from downtown. I followed at a distance, my heart hammering against my ribs. She drove slowly through the winding streets, checking her mirrors more than usual. Finally, she pulled into the driveway of a two-story colonial, with navy shutters and perfectly manicured landscaping. I parked 3 houses down, behind a large maple tree, and watched as she got out of the car. She moved differently than she did at home, more deliberately, more sensually. She smoothed her hair and adjusted her sweater before walking to the front door. It opened before she could knock, and a man I'd never seen before stepped out to greet her. He was tall, maybe 45, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confident smile that probably worked on a lot of women. He wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her close, kissing her in a way that left no doubt about their relationship. I watched my wife, melt into another man's embrace on his front porch, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I sat there for a full 5 minutes, gripping my steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles went white. Part of me wanted to march up to that door and confront them both. Another part wanted to drive away and pretend I'd never seen it. Instead, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called her. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hi, honey," she said, and her voice was perfectly normal, perfectly sweet. "What's up?" "Just checking in," I managed to say, my throat feeling like it was closing up. "How's the exhibit?" "Oh, it's wonderful," she replied without missing a beat. "Monica's absolutely loving the contemporary section. You know how she feels about abstract expressionism." The lie was so smooth, so automatic, that it made my stomach turn. I looked at the house again and saw a shadow moving past the front window. Probably the man, probably waiting for her to finish her call to her husband. "That's great," I said, and I was proud of how steady my voice sounded. "Listen, I was just wondering, what's the name of that exhibit again?" There was the slightest pause. The Midwest Contemporary Collection," she said. "Why?" I closed my eyes. The museum's website had been advertising their Civil War photography exhibit for weeks. There was no contemporary collection. "Just curious," I said. "Well, I'll let you get back to Monica." "Okay, love you," she said quickly. "Yeah," I replied, but I couldn't bring myself to say it back. I hung up and sat there staring at the house, watching the closed door that had swallowed my wife. My mind was racing, jumping between rage and disbelief, and a strange, hollow feeling in my chest. How long had this been going on? Who was he? How many other lies had I swallowed without question? After what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes, I drove home. The house felt different when I walked in. Smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in. I walked through our living room, looking at the framed photos of our vacations, our anniversary dinners, our life together. In every picture, Diane was smiling at the camera with that same radiant expression I'd fallen in love with. Now I wondered how many of those smiles had been performances. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly how deep this deception went. I opened our laptop and logged into our cell phone account. Diane had never been secretive about passwords. We'd always shared everything, or so I thought. I pulled up her call log and immediately saw a number that appeared dozens of times over the past 3 months. Late evening calls, early morning texts, conversations that lasted for hours while I was in my workshop or running errands. Next, I checked our bank records. There were charges I didn't recognize. A boutique hotel on the other side of town, expensive restaurants I'd never been to, purchases at stores I'd never heard of. One entry caught my eye, a $200 charge at something called La Petite Boutique from 2 weeks ago. I looked it up online. It was a lingerie store. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more transactions. Gas station purchases in areas where Diane had no reason to be. Lunch charges during school hours when she claimed to be in meetings. A pattern of deception that stretched back months, maybe longer. I printed everything out and put it in a folder. Then I called Monica. "Harold," she said, sounding genuinely pleased to hear from me. "How are you? It's been too long." "I'm good, thanks," I said, though I felt anything but good. "Listen, I have kind of an odd question. Are you with Diane right now?" "With Diane? No, why would I be?" My chest tightened. "She said she was meeting you for lunch and an art exhibit today." There was a long pause. "Harold, I haven't seen Diane in over a month. We've barely even texted lately." "I see," I said quietly. "Is everything okay?" Monica asked, and I could hear the concern in her voice. "Yeah, just a miscommunication. Thanks, Monica." I hung up and sank into my kitchen chair, staring at the evidence spread out in front of me. Phone records, bank statements, lies upon lies upon lies. The woman I'd shared a bed with for 14 years, the woman I'd trusted with everything, had been living a double life with an expertise that terrified me. Diane came home around 6, humming softly as she hung up her coat. She looked relaxed, satisfied, like she'd had a wonderful afternoon with her friend. "How was Monica?" I asked from the kitchen table, not looking up from the newspaper I was pretending to read. "Oh, you know Monica," she said with a laugh, full of drama about the divorce, but the exhibit was beautiful. You would have loved the sculpture garden. Another lie delivered with the same casual ease as asking about the weather. "That's nice," I said. She kissed the top of my head another performance and started preparing dinner, chattering about her day, spinning more fiction about conversations with Monica that never happened and artworks she'd never seen. I watched her move around our kitchen, this woman I thought I knew better than anyone, and realized I was looking at a stranger. How many evenings had she stood in that same spot, cooking dinner and telling me about her day, while hiding the fact that she'd spent hours with another man? How many times had she kissed me goodnight after texting him from our bathroom? That night, lying in bed beside her, listening to her breathe, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I was going to find out exactly who she really was and how long this had been going on. I owed myself the truth, even if it destroyed me. Over the next week, I became someone I never thought I'd be, a man who spied on his own wife. I followed her twice more, watching her drive to that same house in Willowbrook Estates. I sat in coffee shops near her school, observing her interactions with colleagues, looking for signs of this secret relationship. I even drove by the school one afternoon and saw her getting into a car with him, a red BMW with personalized plates that read, Greg M. Greg. Now I had a name. I looked him up online and found his LinkedIn profile easily enough. Gregory Morrison, regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. Divorced, 2 kids who lived with their mother in California. 46 years old, originally from Michigan. His profile picture showed him at some corporate event, wearing the same confident smile I'd seen on his front porch. The more I learned, the angrier I became. This wasn't some passionate love affair that had swept Diane off her feet. This was calculated, systematic deception. She'd been making deliberate choices to betray our marriage, while maintaining the facade of a devoted wife. But the worst part was discovering how long it had been going on. Digging deeper into our phone records, I found the first call to Greg's number dated back 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of her kissing me goodbye in the morning and hello at night while carrying on with someone else. One evening, about 10 days after I'd first followed her, Diane announced she was going to a faculty meeting that was running late. "Don't wait up," she said, grabbing her purse. "These budget discussions can go on forever." I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway, then I got dressed and drove to Willowbrook Estates. Sure enough, her Honda was in Greg's driveway. The living room lights were on and I could see 2 silhouettes moving around inside. I sat there for over an hour, watching the shadows, imagining what they were doing in there. This wasn't just about sex, though. That was certainly part of it. This was about intimacy, about sharing thoughts and feelings and moments that should have been mine. This was about her choosing to build a relationship with someone else while letting me believe we had something real. When I got home, I called her. "Hey, honey," she answered, and I could hear voices in the background, though they didn't sound like a school board meeting. "How's the meeting going?" I asked. "Oh, you know how these things are," she said, and I heard a door close, muffling the background noise. "Lots of back and forth about the art department budget. I'll probably be here another hour at least." "Okay, drive safely," I said. "Will do. Love you." This time I said it back, but the words felt like ashes in my mouth. She came home after midnight, claiming the meeting had run incredibly late, and then she'd stopped for a drink with a few colleagues to decompress. She smelled like wine and something else. Men's cologne that wasn't mine. "How was your evening?" she asked, slipping into bed beside me. "Quiet," I said. "Worked on that cherrywood dresser." She curled up against me, her body warm and familiar, and for a moment I almost convinced myself this was all a nightmare. But then she murmured, "I'm so tired," in the same voice she'd probably used to say goodbye to Greg an hour earlier, and the illusion shattered. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to pack her bags and throw them on the front lawn. Part of me wanted to drive to Greg's house and have it out with both of them. But mostly, I just felt empty, hollowed out, like someone had reached inside my chest and removed everything that mattered. The next morning, Diane was her usual cheerful self, making coffee and toast, asking about my plans for the day. She was wearing one of my old t-shirts and flannel pajama pants, looking like the same woman I'd been waking up next to for 14 years. But I couldn't stop thinking about her in Greg's arms. Couldn't stop wondering if she ever thought about him when she was with me. "I'm going to visit my sister this weekend," she announced, buttering her toast. "Amy's been after me to come see the new house." I nodded, though I was already planning to call Amy later to verify this story. "That sounds nice," I said. "Yeah, how long will you be gone?" "Just Saturday night. I'll drive back Sunday afternoon." Another lie, I was sure of it. Amy lived 3 hours away, hardly a destination for a one-night trip. But I played along, kissing her goodbye when she left for work, watching her drive away in the car I'd helped her pick out, toward the job where she'd apparently met the man who was helping her destroy our marriage. I called Amy that afternoon. "Harold, what a nice surprise," she said. "How are you and Diane doing?" "We're good," I lied. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. Diane mentioned she might visit you this weekend, and I wanted to coordinate a little surprise for her. Maybe send some flowers or something?" Amy paused. "This weekend? I don't think so. We're going to be in Chicago for my husband's conference." Did she mean next weekend? Maybe I misunderstood, I said. "Don't worry about it. I'll ask her again." "Okay." "Harold, is everything all right? You sound strange." "Just tired." "Long week. Give my love to everyone." That weekend, while Diane was supposedly visiting her sister, I drove past Greg's house. Her car was in the driveway from Friday night until Sunday afternoon. I didn't stay to watch. I didn't need to torture myself with more details. I just needed to confirm what I already knew. On Sunday evening, she came home glowing with stories about Amy's new kitchen and their Saturday shopping trip, and the great restaurant they'd discovered downtown. She even had a small gift bag from a store I recognized from Amy's city, though she could have bought it online or picked it up anywhere. "How was your weekend?" she asked, unpacking her overnight bag. "Fine," I said. "Caught up on some work, watched the game." She smiled and kissed my cheek. "I missed you." I stared at her, this woman who could lie so effortlessly, who could spend 2 days with another man and then come home and tell me she missed me. I almost admired the skill it took, the compartmentalization. She wasn't just cheating. She was living in two completely different worlds and somehow managing to keep them separate. That night, I made a decision. I was going to confront her, but I was going to do it right. I was going to get all my facts straight, gather all my evidence, and present her with a case she couldn't deny or explain away. I deserved the truth, and I was going to get it. Over the next few days, I put together a comprehensive file. Phone records going back a year, bank statements showing unexplained charges, receipts I'd found hidden in her purse, photos I'd taken of her car in Greg's driveway, a timeline of her lies about evening meetings, lunch dates with friends, and weekend trips. I also made copies of everything and stored them in a safe deposit box I opened, without telling her. If this marriage was going to end and I was becoming more certain that I wanted to be prepared for whatever came next. On Thursday evening, I decided it was time. Diane was grading papers at the kitchen table, her red pen moving across student artwork with practiced precision. She looked so normal, so much like the woman I'd fallen in love with, that I almost lost my nerve. "Diane," I said, sitting down across from her, "we need to talk." She looked up, smiling. "What's on your mind?" I pulled out the folder I'd prepared and set it on the table between us. Her smile faltered when she saw the bank statements on top. "I know about Greg," I said quietly. The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her red pen rolled off the table and clattered to the floor. "Harold, Don't," I interrupted. "Don't lie to me anymore. I have everything. The phone records, the hotel charges, the fake trips to see Amy. I know about Willowbrook Estates. I know you've been lying to me for months." She stared at the papers, her hands trembling. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, either of us. Then she buried her face in her hands and started to cry. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Harold. I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen," I said, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "It's been happening for 8 months, according to these phone records. So I need you to explain to me how something you never meant to happen went on for 8 months. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "It started innocently, I swear. He came to speak at a career day last spring, and we got to talking after his presentation. He was charming and funny, and he made me feel, I don't know, special, I guess. And then what? We started texting, just friendly stuff at first. Then he asked me to lunch, and I said yes, because I thought we were just friends. But he made me feel young again, Harold. He made me feel like I was more than just a small-town art teacher." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "So you decided to throw away 14 years of marriage because a salesman made you feel special?" "It wasn't like that," she said, wiping her eyes. "It just evolved. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were involved." "Involved," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" She flinched. "I know how it sounds. I know how terrible this is, but I love you, Harold. I never stopped loving you. You have a funny way of showing it." "I was going to end it," she said desperately. "I've been trying to figure out how to end it without hurting anyone." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Without hurting anyone? Diane, you've been lying to me for 8 months. You've been sleeping with another man. You've made me feel like I was going crazy, questioning my own instincts. How exactly were you planning to avoid hurting anyone?" She didn't have an answer for that. I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to call Greg right now in front of me, and you're going to end it. Permanently. No gradual fade out, no, we can still be friends nonsense. It's over as of tonight." "Okay," she said quickly. "Yes, I'll do that. And then we're going to talk about whether this marriage can be salvaged. But I want you to understand something, Diane. Trust isn't like a broken vase that you can glue back together and pretend it never happened. You've broken something fundamental here, and I don't know if it can be fixed. She nodded, reaching for her phone with shaking hands. Wait, I said. Before you make that call, I need to know something. Do you love him? The question hung in the air between us. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Finally, she said, I thought I did. But looking at you now, seeing what I've done to us, I realized I was just infatuated with the excitement of it all. The secrecy, the romance, the way he made me feel desirable. But that's not love, is it? That's just selfishness. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, but for the first time in months, she seemed to be telling me the truth. Make the call, I said. She dialed Greg's number, and I watched her face as she waited for him to answer. When he picked up, she took a deep breath and said, Greg, it's me. I can't do this anymore. My husband knows, and I'm ending this. Please don't call me again. I couldn't hear his response, but I could see her face tighten. No, she said firmly. There's nothing to discuss. It's over. Goodbye, Greg. She hung up and set the phone on the table between us. It's done, she said. I nodded. That's a start. But Diane, you need to understand that this isn't something we can just put behind us and pretend never happened. You've fundamentally changed our relationship. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can look at you without thinking about him. What can I do? She asked. Tell me what I can do to fix this. I don't know, I said honestly. I need time to think. I need time to figure out if I even want to try to fix this. She started to reach for my hand, then stopped herself. I understand. Whatever you need, whatever it takes. I'll do therapy, counseling, anything. I don't want to lose you, Harold. I don't want to lose us. I looked at her sitting there, tears on her cheeks, looking like the woman I'd married, but somehow completely different. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back. Part of me wanted to try to rebuild what we'd had, though I wasn't sure that was even possible. I'm going to stay in the guest room for a while, I said, standing up. I need space to think. Of course, she said quickly. Whatever you need. I headed toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back. One more thing. If I find out you've had any contact with him, any contact at all, we're done. No discussion, no second chances. We're done. Do you understand? I understand, she whispered. That night, lying alone in the guest room, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out what I wanted my life to look like. For 14 years, I'd built everything around this marriage, around this woman who had just revealed herself to be someone I didn't know at all. Now I had to decide whether to try to rebuild on the wreckage of what we'd had, or whether to start over completely. It was the hardest question I'd ever had to answer. The following weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. Diane threw herself into trying to repair the damage she'd done. She signed us up for marriage counseling, started individual therapy, and gave me complete access to her phone, email, and social media accounts. She came straight home from work every day, canceled her evening commitments, and did everything she could to prove that the affair was truly over. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that she was genuinely remorseful and committed to rebuilding our marriage. But every time I looked at her, I saw the woman who had lied to my face for 8 months. Every time she smiled at me, I wondered if it was genuine or just another performance. Our marriage counselor, Dr. Patterson, was a patient woman in her 60s who specialized in infidelity recovery. She guided us through difficult conversations about what had led to the affair, what it meant for our future, and how we might begin to rebuild trust. Diane was open about her motivations, admitting that she'd felt taken for granted, bored with our routine, excited by the attention Greg had shown her. That doesn't excuse what I did, she told Dr. Patterson during one session. Nothing excuses what I did. But I want Harold to understand why it happened, so we can make sure it never happens again. I appreciated her honesty, but I struggled with forgiveness. How do you forgive someone for systematically deceiving you? How do you trust someone who had proven so capable of maintaining a double life? Trust is rebuilt through consistent actions over time, Dr. Patterson explained. It's not something that happens overnight. Diane will need to prove herself trustworthy through her behavior, and Harold, you'll need to be open to seeing and acknowledging those changes. 3 months after D-Day. That's what the counseling books called the day I discovered the affair. I was still sleeping in the guest room, still questioning everything Diane said, still wondering if I was a fool for trying to save our marriage. Then something shifted. It was a Saturday morning, and I was in my workshop refinishing a 1940s vanity table that a customer had brought in. Diane appeared in the doorway with a cup of coffee made exactly the way I liked it, with cream and 1 sugar, and stood there watching me work. "Remember our 3rd anniversary?" she said quietly, "when we couldn't afford to go out to dinner. So I made that elaborate meal that was supposed to be coq au vin, but turned out more like chicken soup?" I looked up from my sanding. "You cried because you thought you'd ruined our anniversary. And you told me it was the best meal you'd ever had, even though we both knew it was terrible." She smiled, but her eyes were sad. "That's who I used to be, Harold. That's who I want to be again. Someone who cares more about making you happy than about whether other people think I'm interesting or desirable or special." She set the coffee cup on my workbench and turned to leave, but I called her back. "Diane." She stopped and looked at me hopefully. "It really was the best meal I'd ever had," I said. "Not because of how it tasted, but because you'd tried so hard to make our anniversary special, even though we were broke." She started to cry then, but for the first time in months, they seemed like tears of relief rather than despair. That night, I moved back into our bedroom. It wasn't a sudden reconciliation. We still had months of hard work ahead of us, months of rebuilding intimacy and trust. There were setbacks times when I'd catch her texting someone and feel a jolt of panic, times when she'd be late coming home and I'd immediately assume the worst. But gradually, day by day, we began to remember why we'd fallen in love in the first place. Diane kept her promises. She maintained complete transparency about her whereabouts, her communications, her feelings. She never gave me reason to doubt her commitment to our marriage. And slowly, very slowly, I began to trust her again. Not blindly, the way I had before, but with the cautious optimism of someone who'd been burned, but was willing to try again. A year later, we were stronger than we'd been in years. The affair had nearly destroyed us, but in some strange way it had also forced us to confront problems in our marriage that we'd been ignoring for too long. We communicated better, appreciated each other more, and never again took our relationship for granted. I still think about those dark months sometimes, about the man I became when I was following my wife and gathering evidence of her betrayal. I'm not proud of that version of myself, but I understand why he existed. When everything you believe about your life turns out to be a lie, you have to find some way to reclaim the truth. The truth is that marriage is fragile. The truth is that people can hurt each other in profound ways. But the truth is also that sometimes, if you're both willing to do the work, you can build something new from the wreckage of what you had before. Diane and I did that work. We're still doing it every day, and probably will be for the rest of our lives. It's not the marriage we had before. That innocent, trusting relationship is gone forever. But what we have now is deeper, more honest, and built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than just assumption. I won't lie and say I never think about Greg Morrison or wonder what my life would have looked like if I'd chosen to leave instead of fight for my marriage. But I can honestly say that I'm glad I stayed. Not because what Diane did was forgivable, but because what we built afterward was worth fighting for. Sometimes the best relationships are the ones that survive the worst mistakes. Sometimes love isn't about never hurting each other, but about choosing to heal together when you do.